Hello and welcome to McDougall's Medicine with the McDougall's. I'm your host, Heather McDougall, Dr. McDougall's daughter and the CEO of the McDougall program. Just like every Sunday night, we're going to be doing general questions just because we have so many questions that come in through the chat and by email. I can never get through them all. So I think it's just fun to spend an hour answering your questions. So hi, Dad, Dr. McDougall, how are you? Nice to see you.
Good. I'm good, Heather. You know, I feel like healthcare and good health ought to be free. You know, it's a right, not a privilege. And I never would want to have people not be able to regain their lost health or, help their friends and family because of money. And so, when you say we put this on every Sunday night to answer your questions, I have a little different feeling about it. I put this on every Sunday night so that we never have to say to people, gee whiz, you have to take our 12-day program, even though it, makes a life and death difference. It's available for you. Not only is the whole program available for you on the website for free, including recipes. We probably have 500 different recipes. There's probably every question you ever have on nutrition and medical problems. You have to do it, you have to do the work. Putting it out, but it ain't that hard. I mean, good grief, there's a question box on the website. And then I think having us here on Sunday nights at 5 o'clock Pacific time takes care of one final component, that is, hey, you got questions, I got answers. You don't have to seem to understand it. Well, we'll give it to you as comfortably as we can. And there's nothing better than a video. Nothing better than a live video, nothing better than asking questions. So that's what we really want to do. Also, we're interested in you getting more involved in what we're doing. The 12-day program is really important. I mean, that's been my life's work. It's been 46 years of work. 16 years at St. Helena, 18 years at the resort in Santa Rosa, California, and now we're approaching 3 years doing telemedicine. And it's been fun. I mean, there's nothing more enjoyable than helping people get well, get their health back, and appreciating it. So, that's it. We'd like you to spread the good news to friends and relatives. There's really no reason that anybody that has to be ill, has to be overweight, has to have type 2 diabetes, has to be visiting the doctor for chronic diseases, has to be aging rapidly. It's the food. Which brings me into another subject, Heather. I've been trying to get ready for next Saturday, which is our final 4-hour lecture in our series about nutrition. And we had a sellout crowd. It was great. I can look forward to giving it again. I'll probably improve on it a little bit again when the next time I do it. But we did one on protein, one on fats, one on carbohydrates. And this one we'll be doing on vitamins and minerals. And there's been some really, really paramount things that have happened in medical care over the last, 1,000 years. People have suffered from infectious disease problems, and we started to handle them with better sanitation and antibiotics, maybe in the mid-1800s. And then people suffered for thousands of years from scurvy and pellagra, beriberi. Problems that have killed millions of people. The statement is that more people were lost on ships due to scurvy than all wars, all storms, all other causes. More people have been lost to scurvy. The people who had sent ships out figured that only half the crew would survive the voyage. And it was as simple as the British in the mid-1800s, a guy named Dr. Lind, call him a doctor, why not? Dr. Lind, he discovered the problem was a lack of citrus fruits. It was a vitamin C problem. And so he got the British, in addition to having grains, which are vitamin C deficient, and legumes, which are vitamin C deficient. Remember, they had no refrigerators. He got them to carry along lemons and limes and other citrus fruits. Cured scurvy overnight. Just an amazing story. And I'm going to tell a story about how this one victim of scurvy, how he suffered so terribly. He used to keep his gums were so swollen and diseased, and various parts of his body were so sickened and dying that he used to take his knife and cut out parts of his own body. Oh, it was horrible, the scurvy. Of course, we don't see that at all today because of the wide variety of diet that people have. Not because of the vitamin pills, but because people eat fruits and non-perishable vegetables, which have vitamin C. But as you've heard me say many, many times over again, is above ground storage organs, which would be your grains and your legumes. They don't have enough vitamin C. And if you go out to sea, in 2 to 4 weeks, some people are going to start falling down with scurvy. And by the time your ship gets back to port, half of people would be dead from scurvy. So you got to take those limes along. Or, you could have refrigerators too, and there are other things you could take. But anyways, that was interesting. I studied about beriberi over this past week, and I'm going to present that in the presentation. This is a disease of polished rice. It didn't exist before they started polishing the rice. And when you polish the rice, you take off the coating. You take off, in the coating lies the B1 or thiamine. And I've treated thiamine deficiency. I think it's called Kornikos-Warkhoff syndrome. I probably have the pronunciation a little slow there, but I've taken care of a few patients in my early career that were alcoholics who had B1 deficiency, and they had serious neurologic problems. Anyway, the people in Japan, because only poor people ate brown or red rice, it was the white people ate the polished rice because they were rich, they were clean. They're the ones that got the beriberi and died from it. It killed people. So again, it gets back to the food, doesn't it? And then there was pellagra. Pellagra, they say, is due to corn, eating too much corn. And you'll hear that, but not until they started processing the corn. Yeah, not until it started refining it. Corn intact does well. And plus, through most of the populations, the American Indian, the Central American people, they would boil, or in other words, cook their corn with lime. You see in the packages on corn tortillas that they always have lime in them. Well, you may not have known that was what that was for, but cooking the corn in an alkaline substance frees the tryptophan, which is an amino acid, which is a precursor to niacin, which is vitamin B9, I believe. It's a food. You start refining the food, you get in big trouble. So let's see, then there's folic acid deficiency, and I'm going to talk a bit about that. Folic acid deficiency can cause megaloblastic anemia, which is a condition I've seen where you have great big blood cells and you run hemoglobins of, say, 5. But you still run around, you do well because your blood cells are so big. A normal hemoglobin would be, say, 12 to 14 milligrams percent. But they're down at 5. And it's because of lack of folate. You get the same condition with B12 deficiency. You get a megaloblastic anemia. So, that was the main problem with folate deficiency. And of course, it was easy to figure that out. And as they did in the mid-1800s, they found folate initially in the spinach leaves. That's where the original experiments were done. And so there's an Italian word, folium, something like that, that reflects the word folate. And that's the plant form of folic acid. The drug form, the pill form, is folic acid. Folate is the plant form. Anyway, they're easily correct once you start eating the plants, particularly the green and yellow vegetables and leafy vegetables and so on. Now we have a problem with folate deficiency related to spina bifida. And again, this is something, I've lived long enough, I've seen enough patients, I've had enough experiences that, these are really meaningful problems I've seen. As a medical student, I delivered 2 babies. I was in the room, caught the babies, which were born without brains. It's called anencephaly. They just went from the spinal column up to their forehead. All this was missing. Of course, the babies died. But we didn't know back then. We didn't realize that it was I started medical school in 1965. They weren't really even talking about supplementing a woman's diet before she got pregnant. with folic acid. We really didn't understand what caused these problems. I've been on pediatric wards when I took pediatric rotations, where I probably seen, 24 children with spina bifida, where the base of their spinal column is opened up, and it's free. You can see the nerves at their tailbone, and of course they're paraplegic. They can't. Spina bifida is folic acid deficiency from not eating foliage, plants. So, it's going to be a fun lecture we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a lot about B12 and a lot about how it's not wise to approach the problem from taking pills, except B12, but certainly not taking folic acid pills. You need to approach it from taking folate. There are a whole bunch of reasons we're going to get into there next Saturday. So, I'm looking forward to that. I'm also going to talk about vitamin K2, which is the really popular vitamin these days. And Michael Greger did a nice piece last week on vitamin K2 and went over a lot of the things that I've been researching. It's another sham. Vitamin K comes from foliage. It's the same darn story, folks. So, maybe you're not going to suffer from the ravages of vitamin deficiency, like was so common 100, 150 years ago and beyond. Because your diet is varied enough, and because we have refrigeration, and it's been emphasized that people eat fruits and vegetables. I don't know how often a doctor these days sees these conditions, but you got to remember, I started this 1968, a long time ago. That was more than 50 years ago. So I saw a lot of things, and a lot of infectious disease and a lot of vitamin deficiency problems. And the next great challenge is what we're working on full time. You and I and Mary and our team, we're working on full time to stop the current cause of sickness and death. Again, it's the food. It's a matter of the food. In this case, it's a matter of eating too much rich food and not enough folate, grains and beans and potatoes and things like that. Not eating a starch-based diet. Yeah, these folks in the past, they ate a starch-based diet. A lot of the starches were refined. That's why they got into trouble, as I told you. They couldn't afford meat. There was no refrigeration. The dairy would spoil, et cetera, except maybe the cheese lasted a while. But what do we have today? Because of all of our economic advantage, everybody's got a refrigerator. Most people can afford to go out to eat and buy all kinds of foods, but you overdo it, folks. You overdo it, and you end up eating like a king and a queen, and you get obese and diabetes and cancer, gout and heart disease, just like the royalty of the past. Very simple. This is as simple as curing the vitamin deficiencies or the infectious disease problems, at least the common ones that we had, back in the 1800s, the pneumonias, the tuberculosis, et cetera. This is so simple. I have hope, though. And I'll end by telling you why I have hope is last week I was informed by the head of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, ACLM. Susan is her name. She wrote me, she said, you ought to really be proud of what you've accomplished. And I thought, what are we talking about now, Susan? Well, what happened was last week, Eric Davis, the New York mayor, he was involved with a whole bunch of congressional people so that Congress passed a financial bill giving the American College of Lifestyle Medicine $44 million to try and carry out the message that we're trying to give people. $44 million. And also the people involved have a direction. The mayor of New York, he cured his diabetes with obesity. More and more people are figuring out what the truth is. And the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has been near and dear to me. It was founded in 2004. I was one of the original founders with John Kelly and a few other young doctors, men and women. And, at that time, I had some bright ideas, but the American College of Lifestyle Medicine wasn't ready for my bright ideas. I thought we should get congressional involvement. We should get laws passed that people ought to be fed well. Like, for example, the people who are on food stamps. What are we giving them meat and dairy and candy bars for? You know, why don't we give them an educational message along with, you know, you need to eat beans and potatoes and rice and corn. That's what I wanted to do. And the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to get a state law passed, or laws all over the country passed, that required doctors to learn about human nutrition. Again, even for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, I was ahead of my time in 2004. Well, you know, most of you know that in 2011, SB 380 was passed, which is a bill I wrote. I'm supposed to tell you that, which was passed by both houses of Congress in Sacramento, California, and signed by Jerry Brown in September 2011, which SB 380, you can look it up, California SB 380, requires the 11 medical schools in California to teach human nutrition and the 500 hospitals to include nutrition in their educational programs. But, you know, it's a whole side of the story I'll tell you sometime about how they've gotten around it. That was 2000, that was 13 years ago. Still, there's not a medical school I'm aware of that really takes seriously the teaching of human nutrition, and certainly not diet therapy. Why is all this the way it is? Come on now, folks. It's because of money. It's because the meat and dairy industry, the fish industry, you know, the pork industry, you know, the poultry industry. They don't want you filling your stomach with potatoes or rice or beans. They want you filling your stomach with stuff that is making you ill and dying of cancer and heart disease and diabetes. It's just money. Well, we got $44 million to kind of counteract them now with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And just to end, I'll say, and we'll get on to questions, that you know, I had been involved a lot with this organization. In fact, your mom and I financially supported the organization. It would have gone out of existence, except we came up with the money that they needed to stay alive. That was about in the year 2005 or 2006. And they remember that, and that's good. Now, one of the nice things they did for me was they gave me one of the few honors that I've gotten. The Senate of Hawaii has honored me by some kind of declaration or proclamation that I did a good job in Hawaii helping people. But they gave me a lifestyle achievement award, which only 4 of them have been given. It was in September 2019, and I was honored. But I wasn't going to accept the award just to fly to Orlando, Florida, and accept the award. I really care that much, to tell you the truth. Except now I do. I'm glad I did. But they allowed me 9 minutes to talk about my current passion, and that is diet and global warming. Actually, I talked for 22 minutes. I got 2 or 3 standing ovations. But little has been done. With this new money, this $44 million to the American College of Lifestyle and Medicine, I'm pretty darn sure that there's going to be emphasis on diet and the climate. It's the same darn diet that will return your health. It will return the health of the planet, or at least in part. You know, if you want to know the whole story, I give you a website that I strongly encourage you to visit, because we're far too gone as far as the carbon dioxide, the greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, to reverse that problem, even stopping fossil fuel, even all of us become vegan. But we have to do these things. What we have to do is we have to separate CO2 production from global temperatures. And that's done by a website called MIR. Write it down. You know, it's going to make a difference. We just need enough people to start thinking in this direction. MEER.org, MIR.org. It's a matter of cooling the planet with leftover tin cans and leftover plastic bottles, turned into mirrors, which reflect the sunlight and cool the planet. It has to be done. Of course, other things have to be done. We've got to harness the fossil fuels. Got to stop doing that. We've got to have renewable energy. We've got to do that. And we've got to change the diet of the people on the planet. That's enough, Heather. Got carried away. Ready for questions.
You're so funny. You go on and on, but I love it. I love these hours because I always learn something, and I know everyone else does too. So it's great to hear you talk. But I have dozens of questions. I have questions that people have emailed me. So let's get to one. This is from Janet. She wants to know what you think about taking the bilberry extract for eye health.
I don't know about that. I don't think it'll do you any harm. When you say bilberry, I certainly remember it as being something good for eye health. There's something that has a similar name, which has just been recommended as an herb for cholesterol. I wish I could remember what that was, but I don't think it'll do you any harm. What I would suggest you do, and I may do it myself, is go to the National Library of Medicine and do the research. Look for things like the Cochrane reviews. Look for various review papers that are not funded by industry. The problem is that most of the supplements that are sold today, the dominant amount of research out there is paid for by companies that make supplements. What do you think they're going to tell you? Anyway, I think, like many things that I tell you to do, because you're going to be offered all kinds of ways to solve your problems. With bilberry, for example, I would say, is it going to hurt me? It's not going to kill me. Then I would ask, do I have the money, time, and effort to test to see whether it works? I don't know how much it costs, but I assume it's relatively reasonable in price. And I got the time and I'm willing to take a pill, which is a little bit of effort. But what they promised me, they have to fulfill. And they have to fulfill it in 4 months. So if it ain't working in 4 months, they're wasting your time and money. That's the way I would like you to go about different things. That research it, see what other people have to say. That's what I do, and then give it a test. If it promises better eyesight, well, you might want to go and have your eyes checked by the doctor and have your vision checked or whatever they promise, and check it again in 4 months. If it hasn't worked in 4 months, it's not going to work.
I like that. Good advice. Okay, next question. Can you talk about kidney stones and oxalates?
Yeah, I'd love to. Oh, I love that subject.
I know.
Okay. Most kidney stones today that are found, and by the way, if you have kidney stones, you need to have them analyzed. Okay, the stones will pass, or the doctor will help you pass the stones with a cystoscopy. They'll go up with a tube and a net and grab the stones and pull them out of your ureters. It is not a pleasant thing to have done. Passing kidney stones, they tell me, is worse than having a baby. Women who've had both experiences, they say it's far worse than having a child. So most of the kidney stones that are going to be analyzed are going to be found to be made of calcium oxalate. Oxalate is found in green vegetables, but it's found in a complex form of calcium oxalate, which is insoluble. In other words, it stays in the partially digested plant matter. It will not be absorbed into the gut, into the bloodstream. It just stays as an insoluble complex, passes out with your stools. What happens, though, is that when you eat fat, a process called saponification, SOAP, just like in soap, saponification takes place, grabs a hold of the calcium and frees up the oxalate. Now it can be absorbed. And so it's absorbed into the bloodstream, into the tissues. And if you've checked your blood, you'd have high levels of oxalate in your system. Okay, so that's one component. It's the fat that frees up the non-absorbable oxalates and allows them to be absorbed. The other component is the calcium. And the calcium doesn't come. Remember, through saponification, the calcium is now complexed in the gut. It's not going to be absorbed. The calcium comes from the bones. And that's as a result of a high acid diet, which is the diet of animal foods. Animal foods are high in protein, high in amino acids, high in sulfur-containing amino acids, which break down into sulfuric acid. with meal after meal, you dump this acid load, fried eggs and bacon and fish and cheese and chicken. And this is all heavily acid food. So you dissolve the bones, and there you provide the component of calcium in the kidney. So you got this mixture going on. And you throw in a little uric acid. That's often nice to do. You often find little uric acid, and that again comes from the animal foods that you eat. And you form these kidney stones. What should you do? Well, best thing to do is nothing unless they hurt you. If they hurt you, then there's a process where they can break them up by delivering sonic waves. Okay, they have this machine, and they break these stones up, and then they're easily passed, or more easily passed. They're never easy to pass, I hear. So you can have this done. Then the next resort is the first resort is to pass them on your own. You go to the hospital, they'll give you some narcotics, they'll try and make it tolerable for you, and you'll pass it on your own. If you can't, then you'll have this sound wave breakup of the stones that occurs, and you'll likely be able to pass it. If not, the doctor will reach in with a cystoscope and go up there, and they're flexible these days, so they don't hurt so much. When I started doing it, it was a silver tube, and they stick this tube up there, and they have baskets, and they grab a hold and they pull the stone out. The problem is you're likely to be a recurrent stone former. In 1978, in the British Journal of Urology, an article appeared that was titled, "Should Recurrent Stone Formers Become Vegetarian?" What do you think? Because you're going to be a recurrent stone former unless you change your diet, unless you stop freeing up the oxalate, unless you stop dissolving the bones. You're going to get more stones. If you haven't learned the first time, well, you have another chance. Most of them are deadly. That we saw after World War II, stones disappeared in Europe during World War II, just like most diseases did. And then after the war ended and good times, good food returned, stones became plentiful in Western Europe. Now, there's a study after study after study. And where do you find this? If you want to review this information and you want to see the science behind it, there's a book called McDougall's Medicine, A Challenging Second Opinion, which I published in 1984, which hardly a word needs to be changed. And guess what? Heather's giving that book away. It's her Christmas spirit. In fact, she's given all our books away for free. She's given away 2 big cookbooks, the McDougall Health Supporting Cookbooks, the McDougall Program for a Healthy Heart, the McDougall Program for Women, the McDougall Plan, and McDougall's Medicine, A Challenging Second Opinion. She didn't ask me first, but she did. So they're available. You just go to the website, drmcdougall.com. You go shopping. When you get to checkout, you'll find that your tab is 0. No gimmicks. And what should you do with these books? You should pass them on to everybody you know who might care. Your friends, your relatives, your dietitian, your doctor, your health coach, your exercise person, Aunt Millie, everybody. You have my permission. I own the books. And they're very heavily documented in the science. All the stuff I just told you about oxalates is there. All the research. Every doctor should know this. Every urologist should practice this. As I started telling you, there's no such thing as diet therapy taught in medical schools. There's no such thing as diet therapy practiced in general practice. It's the money. Excuse me. Anyway, that's the story on oxalates. Good enough.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Next question, this is from Nomad Wanderer. How important are cholesterol levels in predicting heart attacks?
Oh, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. The chance of having a heart attack if you drop your cholesterol 60 points is reduced by 50%. That's one of the figures that I remember. It's because the same thing that causes the arteries to become diseased is the same thing that raises the cholesterol in your body and blood. Okay, it's not that cholesterol is toxic to your arteries. It is maybe a little bit. There's some stories about oxidized cholesterol damaging the arteries. But ladies and gentlemen, it's much more than that. It's bathing these tender tissues with blood that is full of fat, the wrong kind of proteins, environmental chemicals, antibodies that are produced by the foods that you eat that take and damage your artery linings and cause them to suffer with festering sores. And by the way, your cholesterol goes up. But you need to know this because that's the reason taking very powerful cholesterol-lowering medications does not, in any significant amount, appreciable amount, worthwhile amount, reduce the risk for people who are healthy of having a heart attack, regardless of their cholesterol. That's what the officials say when they currently talk about statins. You can look it up. You can search it at PubMed.gov. If you look at recent reviews on statins, they'll tell you that a doctor should prescribe statins, as I do, in high-risk people. By the way, statins lower cholesterol quite dramatically. But it's with diet change that you get this 50% drop in your chance of having a heart attack with a 60-point drop in cholesterol, not with drugs. Not with drugs. So it's pretty clear that primary prevention, which is where you try and stop a heart attack or a stroke, and somebody who's never had a heart attack or stroke or heart surgery, plain and simple doesn't work. You find me a good review paper that says otherwise. You find me a position paper that says otherwise. You won't. You know, what the bottom line is now is that somebody who's had a heart attack, maybe a stroke, heart surgery, well, that's called secondary prevention. They already had something happen. And in that case, there's a tiny reduction in risk of having another future bad event. So, you know, if cholesterol were the problem, then statins would be the solution. And those doctors who for the last 30 years have said that we should put statins in the drinking water, just like we do fluoride, I'm serious. A common statement from doctors up till recently, when this new data came out, has been we should put statins in the drinking water because heart disease is common. Half the population dies prematurely of heart attacks or strokes. You know, this is a normal part of living, but it's something that doesn't have to happen. And people who eat starch-based diets still, and in the past, they don't have these problems. They don't have heart attacks. Anyway, that's for you to discover. So I guess my point is, don't focus just on the cholesterol. That's your way down second line effort. Focus on the food. And our average reductions in cholesterol are 22 milligrams per deciliter in 7 days. No drug manipulation. We didn't stop or start statins. And that's maintained at a 20 milligram drop in cholesterol for a year based on 2 studies done on my patients, independent of me. You know, you'd be proud if you got that reduction and then maintained it with statin drugs. But you did it by solving the problem. You did it by stopping the damage, by allowing the body to heal, not by taking some relatively irrelevant factor and squashing it down. You know, the example I give of modern medicine is one I think that I'd like to share with you. I also used to work in an emergency room. In fact, I was in charge of the Queens Medical Center emergency room, which was the biggest emergency room in Honolulu when I was a young doctor. Imagine that you're on duty in the emergency room, and this happened to me many times. And it comes through the doors, an obtunded patient, huffing and puffing. Look like they're dying. They're sweaty. You know, you're really concerned about them. So you rush them into the exam room. You rush your staff in there. You tell your staff to evaluate the person. Staff comes back and says, well, you know, Mr. Jones has a temperature of 104. Breathing at, instead of 18 times a minute, breathing at 40 times a minute. You know, it's clammy. And when I listen to his lungs, they're all full of fluid. And you say as a doctor to your team, well, what we're going to do tonight, team, is we're going to treat the fever. And so you give the patient some aspirin, and you go back and check on the patient a half an hour later. What do you find? You find a dying or dead patient of pneumonia with a normal body temperature. Do you feel good about that? Well, that's what you're accomplishing when you use these drugs to treat your cholesterol, as opposed to fixing the problem, which is the food.
Thank you. Great answer. He always gives us so much information. Okay, next question. This is from Crystal. She's wondering if a whole food plant-based diet would help with pulmonary hypertension.
Yes. Yeah, it will help with pulmonary hypertension. Can I give you the science and the literature on that? No, I can't. I just, I've had a few people with pulmonary hypertension who, it's just like what this is due. It's due to increased resistance of flow in the lungs. So the pressure on the right side of the heart decreases. So whereas regular hypertension, arterial hypertension, the pressures in the left side of the heart increase. And if you change your diet, there's really no other good treatment. Just like with the drugs used to treat high blood pressure for arterial hypertension, they are pretty much a failure. Pretty much a failure. If you want to hear a good discussion on hypertension, a good discussion on heart disease, good discussion on cholesterol, you go search the 3 lectures I gave. One, if they're under McDougall's medicine, under the McDougall channel. The one is on heart disease, so you put in McDougall and heart disease. The other is on hypertension, so you put in McDougall and hypertension. And the third one is on cholesterol. You put in McDougall and Easter eggs. Those are the 3 articles. And you're not going to find, I don't know, you can look it up, but when you decrease your pressures, they decrease through the entire body. The eye pressure decreases. So if you have glaucoma, the eye pressure is going to decrease when you change your diet. If you have pulmonary hypertension, the pressure is going to go down. But you really got to be strict with the diet. But it's your life. What's it worth? Really, folks. What's it worth? What's it worth to spend another evening at dinner with your spouse, or another afternoon playing a game with your grandchildren, or going out and doing your favorite sport or hobby? What's it worth? For most of us, it's just worth a few pills because that's all we're taught. But it's worth more than that. Your life is worth fixing the problem. The problem is the food. The solution is a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables, consumed to the fullness of your appetite. You can eat as much as you want, as often as you want, any time of the day you want. You can put a little salt and sugar on it in most cases. Maybe this pulmonary hypertension, you wouldn't want to do that. Just like in severe hypertension, you wouldn't want to do that. And the vasculature is going to improve. The numbers are going to get better, but the important thing is you're going to be better, which is what you want. You don't want to just walk around with nice numbers. I've had many people who would come in and see me, and I'd sit down. I did their histories and physicals, touch them and looked in their eyes and listened to their chests. 12,000 of them. And often what would happen is we'd sit down together and I'd say, under present illnesses, you listed nothing. You got no present illnesses, right? Right, doc? Well, under medications, you've got a statin drug, you've got 3 blood pressure drugs, you've got a diabetes drug. Oh, yeah, I used to have these problems. No, I don't have them anymore. Yes, you do. You just covered up the signs. That's all you've done. You've taken an aspirin for the pneumonia. You haven't given antibiotics for the pneumonia. You just, that's why the results are so miserable, but the money is so great. Good grief. Do you ever watch cable news? All day long, they're advertising one expensive diabetic medication after another, one medication for autoimmune disease after another. And basically, they're all the same medicine. There are a few of the diabetic medications, they work a little different than others, but they don't solve the problem. And the autoimmune medications, they suppress your immune system, which creates a lot of other problems like death and cancer. No, listen to these people and then decide, what do you want? What do you want? Do you want to cure the problem? 100% of type 2 diabetes is curable. Do you want to cure your rheumatoid arthritis, your lupus, your kidney disease, your bowel diseases that are due to autoimmune diseases, or do you want to take a bunch of immune suppressants? I know your insurance company pays the $20,000 to $70,000 a year that it costs just for the drugs. It's your life. You decide.
What's amazing is those commercials, they have to list all the side effects, and that's almost longer than the commercial itself.
You'd think somebody would be paying attention, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Especially, Heather, it's been something I say every time on this show, is that, okay, give me a chance, at least listen to what I have to say as far as your problems go, and then go see the real doctors, so to speak. You're basically going to get the same kind of care from every single one of them. Few exceptions. They're going to give you a bag full of drugs and a bunch of excuses. So at least go in prepared. Take the trouble. You're the one that suffers or gains most by whatever's done to you. Take the trouble to read the books, which we'll give you free now. Take the trouble to watch the videos on YouTube, which are free. And then arm yourself with information, just like you do if you went in to buy a new car or a used car. You'd kick the tires, you'd read the reports, you'd find out whether it was worth your money or not. You'd go in informed, but you don't when it goes to see your doctor. You believe these people, they're next to God. Well, I think they try hard, I really do. I don't think that's the problem. I think most doctors want to help people. They're just lazy.
They've got the wrong tools. They don't know the tools that you do.
But they could learn them, Heather. It's not like I haven't been on the major television and radio shows throughout the country and, have spread this message. Most of the doctors have heard of me or Dean Ornish or Caldwell Esselstyn or Neil Bernard. They have the opportunity to do otherwise. It's just you make so darn much money doing the wrong thing. In a 7-minute office visit, you charge the same amount as you do if you spend an hour with a patient. So it's the money that gets in the way. And I realize you got to pay the bills. You have kids going to school. They have to pay the tuition. You have to pay for the car. I realize that. But you also have to look yourself in the mirror. I don't know. And so I think that even though most doctors understand, especially these days, with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine getting $44 million, you have to really have your head buried in the sand to miss this. Things are changing. I'm excited. I used to wonder whether I was ever going to live long enough to see the pendulum swing back in a direction of honesty, of the truth. I think it is. I see that every place I look. I'm so encouraged. And that's why I'd like to get the team working as hard as I can, which is you folks, the Starch Solutions certified folks, which we talked to tomorrow at 9 o'clock, the alumni from our previous program, which we talked to last Thursday at 11 o'clock. We do follow up with you folks. We do follow up after you take the 12 days, or you just come here for free. We do follow up with you for a year. You get intense personal care, which is what you need when you first start this. And if you didn't do it well, there's probably room for improvement. And besides that, just to spend 12 days with like-minded people is be worth it, wouldn't it? I think so.
Yeah, lots of people in the course, they make friends that they keep for forever. So It's nice to have that connection. Okay, next question. Abigail would like to know what tests you recommend for hypothyroidism.
I just recommend a TSH. There are thyroid antibodies you can get, which tells you that you have an autoimmune disease, which is discussed in the lecture I gave on autoimmune diseases. It's the body attacking your thyroid gland. Why? I believe it's because you eat foreign thyroid glands. Where do you eat foreign thyroid glands from? Where do pig and cow thyroid glands appear on your dinner plate? It's called hot dogs. It's called sausages. So you can get the thyroid antibodies, but I already know they're going to be positive in most cases. You have autoimmune thyroiditis, that's what the doctor's going to tell you. Didn't really help you unless you're willing to change your diet, which you're going to do anyways. And then what I get is a TSH level. You can get a T3, T4, a whole bunch of other variations of T3, T4. And you get those tests too. That doesn't help me at all. I don't base my decisions on such complex medicine. I'm a simple country doctor. And so what I can and what should be done based upon standard recommendations is you should get a TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone tested. Inexpensive, maybe $10. What this does is it measures a hormone that's produced in your pituitary gland, which stimulates the thyroid gland. And if the thyroid gland ain't working well, then you have hypothyroidism. You're producing less T3 and T4. So the pituitary says, hey, you got to produce more thyroid. So it raises the thyroid stimulating hormone and tries to squeeze more thyroid out of your thyroid gland. So if your TSH level, thyroid stimulating hormone level, is high, which is above 2, then likely you have something to be looked at again. I start treating when the TSH level is above 4 usually. Most doctors treat it at a level of 6 or 8 or 10. You'll get up above 10 and you better be treated. If you take thyroid medication, and I prescribe Synthroid, I don't prescribe Armor or natural thyroid because it's made of pig and cow thyroid glands. Think about it, smell it. Anyway, I prescribe enough TSH or enough Synthroid to get the TSH to around 2. If I overprescribe, which I might do, and we check the TSH level again in, say, 3 to 6 weeks. That's what you have to do. You have to check it in 3 to 6 weeks to see if your guess on the right dose is correct. And if it is, if you overdose the person, then their TSH level is going to be low. It's going to be less than 1 microinternational unit. You got to back off on the drugs. You know, if your TSH is above 2, maybe you decide to add a little bit more drug. Synthroid comes in, you know, different dosages. There's a few milligrams different. So you can play around with doses easily. It's cheap, 90 pills for $10 at Walmart. But that's the way I take care of it. And, you know, it's been the way I practice for 50 years. I haven't seen any reason to change on that one. You know, maybe if I was had a back office where I was selling you T3 supplements or some other concoction that was sold out of my back office, I want to do a few more tests to prove that you need to buy these medications. You know, and any general practitioner is going to be able to take care of you in the right way. And if they're not, you should get another general practitioner.
Thank you. Okay, next question. I'm going to ask this because I've never heard this before. This is from Sachi, who's a first-year medical student and was mentioning that there has never been a single case of protein deficiency, like you said, but wanted to ask about kwashiorkor, which is caused by maize diets.
Well, kwashiorkor is a condition as opposed to marasmus. Kwashiorkor is due to starvation. Marasmus is an isolated protein deficiency. Kwashiorkor only occurs when people are starving to death. And in addition to this, they may be given formulas or refined food to recover. In other words, they're giving empty calories like table sugar. So it's not really protein deficiency, it's starvation. It's what kwashiorkor is. And under the rare circumstances where you really do have protein deficiency, which is called marasmus, what happens is you're taking starving people and you're feeding them empty calories. Because all food has plenty of protein in it. In fact, you re-nourish, if you were in Africa as a medical student, if you would re-nourish your starving people, the swollen bellies, the people where their bones are showing, you know the picture I mean. If you re-nourish them, you re-nourish them on their local diet of cassava. It's common to use cassava, which is what 10 million, that seems too few. An awful lot of Africans base their diet on cassava. Cassava's got plenty of protein. Somewhere between 3 and 10% of the calories are protein, depending upon what nutrition values you look up. That's low. That's way enough protein. So anyway, you have to renourish them on your own, on their local foods, and then you correct the problem. And if you try and renourish them on, say, powdered milk, which some of the people did in the beginning when they were trying to help these kids, the idea that we need to add something high protein, so we'll add powdered milk. Well, the airplane was full of SH blank T all the way home because they developed such horrible, debilitating, deadly diarrhea from feeding them this cow's milk. So, you again, look up kwashiorkor. So I'm trying to think of where I discussed this. Probably my newsletter under when friends ask, where do you get your protein? Or just put kwashiorkor in the question part. Anyways, it's a common mistake for people to make. They're taught that kwashiorkor, or they shouldn't be. They should be taught that marasmus is a protein deficient. They're taught that kwashiorkor is protein deficient. It's not. It's starvation.
Thank you. I can't believe I knew you'd know what that was, but I'd never heard of that before. Next question from Crystal.
You've seen starving babies on TV.
Oh, yes.
And it's a terrible problem all over the world. People are starving. And one of the things I'd make as a comment is we can win both problems, the problem of overnutrition and the problem of undernutrition, if on planet Earth we started eating the same starch-based diet. You'd have so much extra food available that you wouldn't have any more starving people. And all of those that are gluttons who are dying from heart disease and diabetes, they'd be cured. It's a win-win situation to get the planet fixed, and we're going to do it. It's happening. The pendulum is swinging in a good direction. Go ahead, Heather.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Crystal. She's wondering if a whole food plant-based diet can help with leaky valves.
No, not much. I assume the leaky valve is a mitral or an aortic valve. And this is due to damage to these valves, which could be caused by streptococcal infections or the result of a streptococcal infection. But most commonly, your valves are damaged due to poor blood supply to the valve leaflets. Atherosclerosis, it's of the microvessels that supply the leaflets of the valves. So once you cause them to die, essentially, the tissue dies, then the result is scar tissue. And then you have a leaky valve. And what do you do about it? Well, a diet's going to help a lot in terms of delaying the need for surgery. Because when you eat a healthy diet, you take the load off the heart. The amount of blood that has to be returned to the heart is reduced drastically when you eat the kind of diet we recommend. And again, I would add low salt to that program. So you put the workload on the heart at much, much less than it was before, which also increases your activity level, which delays valve replacement. There are several types of valve replacement out there. I don't know that they do the Starling valve anymore. That used to be a real kick. You go in and walk in the room, you hear the patient. They had this ball valve, a metal ball valve that bounces up and down, called Starling valve. You could hear them from across the room. Anyway, that's got problems. And now that they do commonly, it's open heart surgery, where they split the chest open. It's life-saving surgery, folks. There's a lot of good things in modern medicine. And if you have incapacitating valve disease, you want to take a look at this. So what they do is they take pig valves. Usually, I don't know whether they use cow valves or not, but mostly pig valves. And they open the chest cavity, and they open the valve, and they cut the bad valve out, and they sew in the good pig valve. And that's a life-saving procedure. Now, they've developed it about 10 years ago, a transcatheter procedure where they go into the leg and they feed the pig valve up into the heart, and they place it in its proper position. So no opening in the chest. And they sew it in. And, the little I know about these various surgeries, boy, I'd sure like to not get my chest cracked open. So if they could do it through my leg, and the recent research says that the outcomes are really good with this transaortic placement of the valves. So, it's a permanent damage. You probably will reduce the progression of the disease by changing your diet. Certainly will reduce the workload on your heart, but there's modern medical care out there to help you if you get into big trouble.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we've got 5 minutes left and
That's
still
a good-
tons of questions. There's just so many. This is a question from a woman that is experiencing acne and acid reflux and is going to be starting the McDougall program, and is also having issues with irregular bleeding between periods. Any recommendation?
Yeah, I'll have to write all those things down. We're going to help you a lot. Acid reflux needs to raise the head of your bed right now. You need to change your diet right now. You need to eliminate raw vegetables right now. It's a starch-based diet. Potatoes and sweet potatoes would be great foods. But green and yellow vegetables uncooked, particularly onions, green peppers, cucumbers, and radishes, are not going to set well for you in digestion. So doing that, and then the next step would be to take a wafer antacid, like maybe Tums. And the next step would be to take an H2 blocker, maybe Tagamet. And then as a last resort, you take a proton pump inhibitor, which we're going to take you off of when you attend the clinic. As far as acne goes, again, that's a dietary disease, and it takes about a month to clear up the pimples. The Nelson twins have a book out about acne. I wrote the foreword to it. And if you look on our website, you'll find a couple articles that I wrote on acne. What happens when you eat the high-fat Western diet, even vegetable fat, especially vegetable fat? The fat ends up on the skin. The bacteria love to eat this fat. Those bacteria, which cause acne, they feed on the fat and they plug the pores and they cause inflammation and you have horrible acne. It's easily curable. So, you also have to be careful about putting oil on your face from your hands. And, you got to get the oil out. It takes about a month. See dramatic improvement. As far as irregular menstrual periods, heavy bleeding between periods is a consequence of, again, eating a high-fat Western diet. What happens is you raise your estrogen levels and you bleed heavily, more blood clots, and more bleeding in between periods. And by the way, you need to have this checked out to make sure there's nothing else going on. But the dietary connection is clear there. You drop your estrogens quite dramatically, which decreases the stimulation of the endometrium, which is why you bleed when the endometrium sheds. So, but in the meantime, I think I would recommend you go see a gynecologist and make sure there's nothing else going on. And if there is, we need to talk before you go to have some treatment, because my opinion of what you ought to do is likely to be drastically different than what you're rushed into. And I'll give you the evidence based on what I recommend. Challenge your gynecologist with this evidence, see what happens. So I'm glad you're attending the program. That's great. But don't wait, get started.
Thank you. Next question, this is from Claudia. How can our diet be healthy while taking COUMADIN?
Well, the common thing about COUMADIN is that they warn you not to eat high vitamin K foods, which are your green and yellow vegetables, your leafy vegetables. And what's supposed to happen is it makes the COUMADIN less effective because COUMADIN is anti-vitamin K. My experience has been this, and I've taken care of loads of people on COUMADIN for atrial fibrillation, is you check the INR, I believe it's called. Anyways, you check the value of your COUMADIN dose, and all you do is you add a little extra COUMADIN, to get the INR what ought to be the correct value. And you just keep eating green and yellow vegetables because they're healthy for you. And you want to avoid heart disease. And COUMADIN's cheap. It's rat poison. I'm sure you get it for almost nothing at Walmart, maybe $10 for 90 pills. Anyway, that's the way I handle it. It is not a contraindication for people following a healthy diet. You do not have to stop high vitamin K vegetables, you can, then we'll just adjust the dose of the Coumadin to fit what your INR is, your bleeding time. The tests they do in the laboratory, which you have to go for every 2 weeks. So, anyway, then we could get into a whole discussion about atrial fib and the other drugs that are used to thin the blood, like Eliquis is a popular one out there, and there are a lot of things. But certainly, when it comes to treating people with Coumadin on a healthy diet, I've had my experience.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll have to get into all of that next Sunday because we've run out of time. That went by fast.
Well, it's great, Heather. I really didn't come prepared to talk about anything, but I'm glad we covered most things. We're going to run the series again. The last lecture is next Saturday on vitamins, which you'll really enjoy. Spend 4 hours together with you, question and answers. And our next program is in January. Heather, what's the date on that?
January 13th.
Okay, so now it's time. You're going to look back. You're going to say, "Why didn't I do this before?" Now, why didn't you do it? But promise yourself in 2023 that it's going to be different. We can do this. We are the best. We are a team that is focused on getting you through the problems, and we'll do it. So hopefully we get a chance to see some of you in January, and of course we're going to run other programs as the year goes on. So this won't be your last chance. But why waste your time? Why waste the money on pills? Why risk the problems that are so common? Makes no sense. So simple, so good. The food too.
It is. Okay, Dad, Dr. McDougall, thank you for your time.
It's fun.
Thanks everyone for being here. We'll see you all next Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific.
Okie dokie.
Take care. Bye, everyone.